We have Curtis May on the call here today. Curtis, really appreciate your time. And I'm going to just call things out right away because Curtis is the owner of Practical Wealth Advisors. So that's easy to find on the interwebs. But also, you got to check out his podcast. It's called The Practical Wealth Show. Really appreciate your time, Curtis. And we're going to dive into a few topics today. But I really appreciate your time.
Hey, I'm excited about it. And let's do it. Let's have some fun.
So, I always find I'm going to ask this right off the bat because when it comes to wealth advisors, I think sometimes wealth advisors, it was kind of career by accident for most people, if that would be a fair way of saying. And you've been in this now for 35 years. Like, how did you start?
It's funny. I started in college. Upon beginning to realize that the NBA wasn't looking for 5'11" shooting guards. And here I was at the end of the bench at this Division II school. I was like, all right, I need a new dream because this is not going to work out. And somebody showed me a check for $400 and said, this is what I made for hours worth of work. I said, doing what? He showed me what he was doing, and and you got to get a license. And I literally took off from school to drive. I was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, so drive an hour and a half to Charlotte to take my exam. And a couple of years after that, I got my investment license. This was like mid 85, actually, and I've been pretty much doing it with some pit stops, but pretty much doing it ever since. And just, learn. And I was typical, like I was Dave Ramsey on steroids. I was evangelical about, buy term investor difference and maxing out your 401ks. And then I read this little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was like, what he's talking about and what I'm doing are not the same thing. And so that started me. Curtis Super Nerd is going down the rabbit hole of, because I read the books, then I read the bibliography of the book, that I'm reading to see who the author's been reading. And it just, that's like some Morpheus, just somebody gave me the red pill. I just went down that rabbit hole and I've been going down it ever since. Sure. And but that's how so I guess I've always done this. I was blessed because my I never got that, what they call, go to school, get a good job talk. My family, my dad we owned a supermarket growing up, and we own, bars or taverns here in Philly. So I've never, he always told me never making money work for somebody else. So I've heard that since I was 7. So I never really, had that go to school, get the good job. I never got that talk. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Sure. No, that's a unique situation, because a lot of, when I was growing up, my parents, we never owned anything, and they were never small business owners, except, my aunts and uncles, they were all farmers. So I guess that's entrepreneurial, and
it for sure is.
I saw that, but other than that, usually people are pushed towards the steady Eddie, what everybody's experienced in.
Yeah, I wasn't pushed that way. I was doing this early on. I said, Dad, I think I want to do this, and he says, well, go ahead. I mean, I was like 21-ish. He said, well, yeah, you're never going to make any money work for somebody else. So go ahead and just make sure you win. Make sure you do it. Make sure you make money. And that was my pet. And I had his backing, and I wasn't any good. So at this, I'm basically introverted and, all that stuff. So this whole journey for me has been one of personal development, is kind of allowed me to, grow my business and expand, the value that I create in the marketplace. And so one of the things that we teach our clients is that you have to work on your mindset, your skill set, and your network. That is what makes money, and I am proof positive of that for sure.
Sure. That's interesting that you say that you're an introvert, but yet you are really in a position or a job that forces you into a lot of one-on-one situations, and now you're on a podcast. I mean, how hard was that piece of it for you?
It's, every time I say that, my kids say, look, you're not an introvert. What are you talking about? I mean, you know, because if we're at parties and we get in a conversation or a cookout about money, they're literally like dragging me away because I'm animated, I'm all hype. But my nature is I'm very comfortable with my solitude. I have this book called Stillness is the Way or something. No, it's by Ryan. I'm studying, what's it called? Stoicism, right? So I have this book by Ryan Holiday. Stillness is the key, I think. And I like my solitude and I'm comfortable with my own thoughts. And I can literally I'm not uncomfortable being by myself or just reading a book, but if we were, let's say, out somewhere, only time I'm like comfortable approaching people is if I'm at a networking event, if we're able to do those again. And it's like, and even then it's energy. Like, it's like, hi, Curtis. Hi, I'm Curtis May. Damn good to meet you. It's like a switch I have to cut on. But when I get home, I'm exhausted because it's not my natural state, but it's now I've learned through, this is the power of personal development, how to win friends, influence people, and how to have power and confidence in dealing with all those, I'm going to use a word, cassettes, tapes, right? Growing up, of learning to get good at that, because Jim Rohn said, I think I heard from Jim Rohn, it was like I think it was Tony Robbins, your income will be in direct proportion to your ability to communicate. So I knew that I had to get better at that. And so I think Tom Ziglar's brother said, he has a book called Timid Salespeople Have Skinny Kids. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna starve to death unless I work on this. So I just, I'm an old basketball player. I'm always working on my game, so to speak.
Sure. No, that's really interesting. Like, I find that, I would classify myself as an introvert as well. And every time I'm in those type of situations, especially networking, and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, is just to force myself, the drive, the commitment to networking, or the commitment to the show drives me to talk to people. And it forces me to be try to force myself into that extrovert at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's what it does. I mean, it's you have to, you've got to let people know. So if you're listeners, and if you're, in real estate, or you're promoting, you're building syndicate, you're in marketing and sales. I don't care what business you're in. So you've got to let people know what you're doing, right? And so people think, well, I'm not in sales, I'm not a talker. Sales, that's not sales. Sales is not talking people into stuff. Sales is helping. And I borrowed this from Dan Kennedy, because not Dan Kennedy, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach is I say it right. It's helping people make a future decision that is good for them.
Right. So no,
and so I view that. So working with me is a good decision. So I'm very, confident that I can help people, because I know I have a process that works, but that's sales, but I'm not talking people into stuff. Most of my work is actually disqualifying people.
Sure. Yeah, we could go all down that whole avenue of sales, right? I mean,
right.
That's interesting you say disqualifying people, because more times than not now, when people are calling in, I buy a lot of distressed homes, and I'm usually, the way you ask questions, you're essentially disqualifying them versus trying to convince anybody into anything. I mean, it's just, but
you can't, it's just, you can't really convince. And so I was looking at your notes of like, so if you're like thinking, like if somebody comes to me and they're like very Dave Ramsey-ish, you won't ever get to talk to Curtis, because if you are thinking that way, all of my conversation is going to repel you. Because I'm not trying to convince you of that. If my philosophy is, if you're happy broke, I'm happy for you. No, I'm just kidding. That's mean. Let's edit that out. But
I'm going to keep that in there. In fact, I'll probably use it as a quote.
Right. So, because I always tell, I did a thing on Instagram the other day, and I was in a bookstore with these young couple, and I was getting some stuff, and that's what I like to do to relax. I was walking through Barnes and Noble, and they were like, "Hey, let's get a book on money." And I was like, "Well, the money section's over there." So I walked back over to see what they were looking at, and she had baby steps, and he had something. They were all over the place. I said, I would start here, and I pointed him to Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then I made, he is, well, I read that. I says, well, she should read it, his fiance, and then you should read Cash Flow Quadrants. And then I'd have you read Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. And, he's like, well, he's got this book by Buffett. I was like, well, you like that, but you don't really have investing is a plan, right? It's not products or tactics. So he didn't really have a philosophy yet of what they should be doing. And so sometimes people are challenged with Rich Dad because it doesn't really give you, it's not tactical. It doesn't tell you what to do, but it's you begin to understand how to think, because it's not about doing, it's about being, right? And it's be, then do, then have. And most people just want to take a shortcut, and there's no shortcuts. You got to learn some stuff. So, and so I had that with them because they were all over the place. I was like, listen, let me just point you in the right direction. Here, listen to my show. I didn't have any cards. I didn't give me information. I said, look, hope you can remember this. Check out the Practical Wealth show. And I'm hoping they, read some of this stuff and call me later, because I'm really curious as how they turned out. So.
Sure. Well, you were mentioning some highlights there. And since you brought it up, let's talk a little bit about that financial plan. Were those bullet points you just gave, are they part of like an ideal financial plan?
Well, let me see. Yeah, a little bit. So what I teach is something called principles-based planning, but preceding that, the ideal financial plan should have these bullet points. You want to build maximum wealth, obviously, but that's not obvious, right? And you want to be able to enjoy. So I want people to be able to enjoy all the wealth that they created, and not like at 65. I'm talking about now. Okay. And I don't believe in living a deferred life. And you want to be able to, what I call, leave a legacy. So you want to transfer the wealth to your family and charities that are important to you. And then the key thing is that whatever plan that you build, it's got to work under all circumstances. Like, you can't have a plan that only works when the sun is shining, when the market's up, when everything is good, because that's, markets go up, markets go down, markets go sideways. And I'm not even talking about the stock market, because I'm the anti-Wall Street financial advisor. I'm talking about real estate markets. So we try to help people identify that there are 4 asset classes, right? Business, real estate, paper, and commodities. And if you look at the 400, who's on there? What do they do? They build businesses and they buy real estate. You're right. So that's the game. And then what I teach is something called principles-based planning, right? So most people, even with a lot of the real estate investors, like even the really successful ones, what I find is that people skip steps to building like what I call a bulletproof blueprint or game plan. And so now here's what I didn't go into this with them, but the principles are, and I'll just go through them fast and we can break them down a little bit if you want to, but because there's principles, then there's strategy, and then there's tactics, right? And so most people are tactical. You have strategy. Most financial advisors don't have any strategy. They're just selling you products, right? Our tactic is a product that you buy. And then there's principles. So what we start with, and we create a one-page blueprint called a personal financial snapshot based on our principles. Principle 1 is saving, right? You got to save 15% of your gross income. See, if you don't save, you don't have any money to invest. The number one problem that I find is lack of capital, or lack of access to capital, really capital, on an individual level. And people need to get way more comfortable with having more liquidity than they have. And so we talk about that. The second principle is maximum protection. So those are insurances, your proper liability coverage on your auto. Do you have an umbrella policy? You're looking at your homeowners policies, looking at your entities. Do you have disability? Or, do you have, your human life value of your life insurance? And so do you have your estate planning set up? See, a lot of people skip that because that's not sexy, right? And they want to jump right to investing, but you have to play defense. You have to secure the kingdom that you're building. Because what happens if you get hurt? What happens if you get sick and you can't work? What happens if you die? The whole thing fall apart. So you're, people in real estate investors, oh, I got all this property, my wife will be fine, or so and so. Yes, but you have no liquidity. Mm-hmm. And there's stuff that has to deal with. So you can't skip the insurance step. And people think, A, it'll never happen to them. Oh, it'll cost too much, or they just don't know what maximum protection is. The third principle is dealing with legacy, replacing all of your 100% of your income in the event of your death. Principle 4, one of my favorites, is liquidity. See, I want 6 to 12 months in like cash equivalent accounts. Now, so within that, I'm known for, we teach something called privatized banking, or infinite banking, if some of your listeners may be familiar with it. So that's a strategy, right? So we go a step back and we teach the principles, and then there's a strategy, and then there's a tactic that goes with that, properly structured, dividend paying whole life. But the principle is, where do you store your cash? But I want 90 days just for emergencies, and anything above 90 days is your opportunity fund for you to use that liquidity to buy and build cash flowing assets. And we call that the velocity method. And so we're focused on cash flow, right? So I want you to have liquidity so you can buy even more real estate or buy even more businesses. And really, if somebody's like working with us from an accountability standpoint, I want you to set 90-day targets. What are you doing to grow those numbers? Sure. We don't focus on net worth. You can't eat equity. Right. And so it's all about cash flow, which is literally the complete opposite of the typical world, which they teach accumulation, what we call in our system, the accumulation theory, right? Buy and hold, sure. Dollar cost average, max out your 401k, all that stuff is accumulation theory. But all of that is designed to make the financial institutions rich. It doesn't do anything for you. So let me take a breath there, because I can rattle on. And get excited.
No. No, this is like really, it's really well thought out. And frankly, it's a fresh air, a breath of fresh air, because what we typically, like, you've brought up a couple of things there that really stand out. But before we dive into a couple of those things, Curtis has an offer for everybody. And, he did just mention the velocity to building wealth. Well, you can get, is it a book or an ebook, or what is it?
It's more of a report.
It's a report.
Short, it's a report. Mm-hmm.
So if you text P Wealth, that's PWEALTH, at 1-833-422-0250, you'll be send a link or for that information. But that's a great offer. So again, it's P Wealth at 1-833-422-0250, and I'll make sure to include that in the show notes for easy access. But you'll probably want to make sure you hit Curtis up on that. And based on what you've been talking about so far, you better check out his podcast as well, because based on us talking 30 minutes, I think you can go far more into detail through his website, the Practical Wealth Show. But Curtis, you mentioned a couple things. Like I said, one of them is that a lot of other financial advisors they see their clients as customers, and it's just to sell them things, just sell them another tool or another index or something, where you see them as these are tools versus another sales event, right?
Right. Products are just like, if you buy, the way our process works is like, listen, if you want to buy a house, you need wood, but you don't want wood. You want to buy a house. But if we build the blueprint for you getting the house, you're going to buy a lot of wood, right? You're going to buy other building materials. So we approach the financial planning that way. We want to give people a thought process of, how do you organize? What principles are you going? And then there are financial products that you need, but the products you need should be a result of your knowledge, not a substitute for it. And so most people are just buying stuff that somebody's selling them, but they don't, if you ask them how they work, or if you ask, I ask people, listen, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your knowledge about the stock market. And most people, that's like a 1. I said, well, if we look at their 401k, I said, do you know who manages the fund? Do you know how much fund but you'll have it in there 20 years or 10 years, and you have no idea how it works. You don't, people think that it's a tax. They're saving money in taxes by funding their 401k for your listeners that still work. And, but qualified plans, for example, which is one of the top 5 wealth transfers. See, most people think the key to growing their money is investing, but we teach efficiency. So if you got a bucket, it's got holes in it, you need to plug the holes first, right? So Curtis, what is Curtis? I'm the hole plugger guy, right? And so the holes are how you pay your mortgage. Like, stop sending extra money, stop trying to do bi-weeklies, or you're not trying to pay your mortgage off early. Let the Fed destroy your debt for you. And taxes, as you know, your number 1 wealth transfer is taxes, how you fund qualified plans, how you pay for like educational expenses, 529 plans and that type of thing, and how you pay for like major capital purchase, which is anything you can't pay for in full with monthly cash flow. So you're going to lose more money in those 5 things I just mentioned than you'll ever make trying to pick winning investments, right? So you gotta stop, you gotta keep it and become more efficient. Now, when you grow, you don't have any leaks, right? And so now you're going to grow because you don't have any holes at the bottom of your bucket. And so while they're listening to your show and they're learning how to do real estate, well, you've got to understand how money works so that you can make your money work harder for you, so that you're more efficient, so that you're more tax efficient. I'll finish the qualified plan thought, is that they only do 2 things. They defer taxes. And so the question, and they defer the tax calculation. That's what they do. So if you got to ask yourself, well, do I think in the future taxes will be higher, lower, or the same? Right? And most people, ever I ask that to, they say higher. Well, why would you defer them then? So it's like, you just have to think through some of the sacred cows that are out there and really think about, are they, because when a financial institution builds a product, here what we talk about is the 4 rules of a financial institution. So think about this. If you were starting a bank, you need money to put in. So if you're coming to me, you want me to deposit my money in your bank,
right?
Don't you? Right? How often?
As often as possible.
As often as possible. And how long do you want me to keep it there?
As long as possible.
And how soon would you want me to take it out?
Never.
So think about that, right? So every financial product that is manufactured is built with those rules in mind. And unless you rethink, you still need to use them, but you need to use them how they use them, and not how they teach you to use them. You got to do what the banks or the institutions do, not what they tell you to do.
Right. Yeah. When you think about it, I almost think that a lot of, I'm going to call it training or money management, what we've been taught is almost the Ron Popeil of banking and savings. You're supposed to just set up an account, shovel money into it, set it and forget it.
Right.
Yeah. We're not meant to question things. And frankly, in most cases, like in a 401k or an IRA, these accounts, you have no idea what companies you're investing in.
Nope. And how does not paying attention and not understanding what you're doing is going to work out long range and think about this. So would a corporation or a bank or institution ever lock their money away for 30 or 40 years?
No, they're constantly lending it out.
They're constant. And so they're creating, so while they're teaching you to buy and hold and worry about the magic of compound interest, the rule of 72 and portfolio rebalancing, they are creating velocity of money, right? Which is the economic principle in real estate, the Burr method, or, you know, I have a client that buys notes, and so what do you want? You want velocity. You want to, how soon can you get your money back so you can deploy it into another asset? That is what is an asset? Something that throws off cash flow, right? So you have to focus on cash flow. That's what they focus on. And so there's velocity, cash flow is leverage. So if a corporation had $1 million in cash and $1 million in debt, you know, to them, that is a balance sheet neutral decision. They would not pay the debt off. That wouldn't even enter their minds. Look, I got $1 million cash. Can I make my money make more money than the debt cost me? And so if you're listeners, you have to learn to think like that. So you've got to I got a client, she has like 4 or 5 properties. She's still trying to pay the damn mortgage off. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay. You have to let that Susie Orman stuff go. All right. Let it go. All right. Because you can't grow, because rich people use debt as money. Right. And so you want to get into, I got a client who I interviewed on my show. She's got like $10 million worth of real estate, and she's got $6 million of debt. And she's bought houses with credit cards, and she's, you know, but she's got probably 300 grand or so of cash flow, you know, over, you know, where she's living off of, and she's using other people's money to do it. And there zeros out her taxes. I love that. But she don't have car loans. She stores all her money in the banking systems that we create for long-term money. And then she leverages that to go buy more stuff. So her whole life is velocity. And so that's what you've got to learn to, it goes back, you know, one of the things that we teach people is investing is not about buying something. It's about becoming something, right? You got to invest in your expertise. You got to invest in what you understand. You got to invest in your knowledge. And then, so our 3 rules of investing is invest in yourself, invest in what you can control, which you can, you know, influence the outcome of, what's generating cash flow. And then the 3rd rule is don't chase returns. But most people are out there chasing returns. They're speculating, they're not even investing.
Yeah. You know, well, we're seeing especially a lot of that right now, whether it's through on all this online, you know, whether it's Bitcoin or Wall Street bets or the GameStop thing, it's all speculation.
It's all speculation.
Yeah.
And so you got to ask yourself so I'm not saying you shouldn't speculate, but I would ask your listeners to say, well, what do I want? So if you want to be financially free, see, because when you hear to Wall Street, oh, we've got X amount assets under management. Well, we just talked about the 4 rules. So if you got $1 million or $2 million in a 401k, how excited are they about you turning that money into cash flow? Because they're charging you fees. So if you take money out, you literally are costing them money. So you're never going to get, oh, I think I want to take some money out of this account so I can buy some real estate. No, we can put you in a REIT. You know, that's their idea of real estate, but you don't own that. That's just a mutual fund backed by real estate, but it's still a stock, right, or what I call a paper asset. So that's not a real thing. So you have to, I'm a big fan of Beverly Hills Cop. You can't fall for the banana in the tailpipe, right? You have to go watch Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy from 1984. You'll get the reference to that joke. And but they're kind of faking you out, and you have to, you know, you want to focus on cash flow. So your objective, and this is what we talk about, is passive income greater than or equal to your expenses, preferably greater than. Right. And so you can get out the rat race. So now if you're focused on that, you're not running around chasing shiny objects. You're not running around hoping Bitcoin goes up. Maybe you do some of that, but how does that turn into passive income greater than your expenses? I mean, you still have to sell the shares, or if you're investing for capital gains, the only way to turn that money into capital is to sell the shares. So now you no longer have the investment.
Mhm.
That's why real estate is so powerful, right? You can get 100, or say, I always tell people, look, if you want $100,000 worth of stock, you need $100,000, right? But if you want $100,000 worth of real estate or $1 million worth of real estate, how much do you need? And the true answer is what? It depends.
Mhm.
Let's say worst case 20%. So now you're controlling a $100,000 asset with 20% of it and using 80% of other people's money. But as your knowledge goes up, now you can raise capital. You got creative financing or use other people's money. But that goes back to, you got to learn how to do that. So it goes back to skill set.
Mhm.
And when you know how to make the magic happen and do syndications, then people who don't know anything will start throwing money at you to do deals. So if you read, like I was talking to a client, he was reading the Think and Grow Rich, and Think and Grow Rich. There's nothing in that book about investing.
Mhm.
If you think about that, it's all about organized planning, specialized knowledge. So if you have specialized knowledge, that's what creates money.
Mhm.
So anyway, stop me, because I can.
No, no,
I can.
this is great. And it's just a great reminder on a lot of levels. And I mean, um, frankly, if you're listening to my show and you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I mean, after this show, go buy a copy like immediately. I mean that lays the groundwork for what Curtis is talking about here. But um,
Matter of fact, that's required reading. Like in my pre-talks with people, I'm seeing if they're, that if they're a good fit to work with us, they have to read Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Richest Man in Babylon. Those are like my prerequisites
two
of
great
just,
books. Yeah.
yeah, and so now because when you talk about principles, really all I teach is that chapter 2 is the 7 cures for a lean purse. Is the the second the chapter in the book, and those are principles. See, principles are unchanging, and that's why you have to build your plan. So we haven't been very tactical on this call other than the 5 principles, but I'm very tactical. But I basically take the Rich Dad stuff and put it into a tactical game plan, and making sure you're saving, making sure you're protected, making sure you're liquid. And it's not my job to tell you what to invest in. It's your job. Okay. My job is to make sure the best I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure you understand how the difference between asset and liability. You know how to read the numbers. And then, success is when opportunity meets with preparation. So if you've got money, you've built up your capital, and you have knowledge, and now what is the money there for? Is to look for stuff. You should see yourselves as like little baby Berkshire Halfways. With like Buffett, all he does is his Berkshire Hathaway just buys, he don't buy stock, he buys the businesses. So you're all buying assets, like, or a little hedge fund. I heard Jay Abraham say this the other day. And a little hedge fund or big hedge fund, depending on what you're doing, but you're, making money. So you're growing your businesses, you're saving that cash flow, and then you're looking for assets to buy or build. And that's your life. That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your focus, because that which gives you get what you focus on. So you don't end up walking around and end up on top of Mount Everest. I mean, you have to plan to climb Mount Everest, right? How to get up here? No, you don't do that. So you're not going to reach the summit of financial freedom just maxing out your 401k and just hoping to work hard and fund your 401k. It's not going to happen. So if nothing else, and I think if you're listening to your show, they should know that. And if you don't have Rich Dad Poor Dad, I want you to go to the bookstore, get it off the shelf, and beat yourself in the head with it for taking so long.
No,
so
well, yeah, I'm sure people
or
are
take your Dave Ramsey book and beat yourself in the head with it. For it. So
no, and Dave Ramsey, he does have some strategies and tactics that do work, but when it comes to savings, that's where we probably.
Well, the thing is, so this is what I told them. I said, listen, you have to decide what you want. This is what I told the couple at the bookstore, right? I said, you have to decide what you want to be when you grow up, right? And so you want to be rich, you want to be poor, you want to be middle class. And so Dave or Susie, if you're like a spendthrift and you're in debt and you're a mess, you can't manage cash flow, his stuff is awesome, and it gets you what I call on top of the horse. But now if you want to go and go into financial freedom land, or as Rich Dad called it, fast track, now you're into Rich Dad, you're into Laurel Langmeyer, I like her too, the Millionaire Maker, and those type of things. And now you're picking your asset class. So I like business. Do I like real estate? Do I like this? And then you're picking the vehicle or vehicles that will take you to glory. But pick a horse and ride it. And you're good at that. And then that can get another horse, and now you have a stable, okay, of bringing you money back. But you some people are like, I got a client, she's all over the place. So it's like, pick one for 6 months, a year, and then add another income stream on top of that one. Because most people are running around like a dog chasing their tail, chasing shiny objects. And then, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm doing a little bit of this. And all I ask them is like, is that going to help you develop passive income greater than your expenses in 10 years or less? That's our goal. And if it doesn't, then drop it and stay focused on that.
Sure.
So that's
no, and that's another thing there that you just pointed out. Then you're trying to accomplish this in 10 years or less. That is a much shorter time frame than I've heard from other financials advisors. And what I really liked early on in our conversation, you said we're trying to avoid that deferred retirement in a way. You're trying to subsidize your income now so you can take advantage of this now.
Yes, I don't believe in retirement. Retirement is an agricultural term that means to withdraw or to put out of use. And that retirement is a man-made concept. It's made up by FDR, who borrowed it from Otto von Bismarck, and which was a socialist idea to move out the old workers to make room for the new workers. And socialism has never worked in the history of mankind, right? So you can't, it's flawed. You're just, a man is a goal-seeking device. So you want to, I always tell people, look, I want you to be able to do what you want to do instead of what you have to. Okay. And there's only so much golf you can play or whatever. I would, if you dropped $1 billion on me right now, I would still do this. Okay. I would teach financial literacy classes, and I'd probably be a high school basketball coach.
Sure.
But I would not stop working, or hey, I'm rich and I'm going to go travel around the world. I would do some of that, but I would still, you gotta, now you can find your purpose. So let's say you're making money, but it doesn't fulfill you. Well, if you work, you got to buy your life back. And then, I had a woman, she wanted to do mission work, or people want to, I had a client, she wanted to do something called Longwood Gardens here. She really liked horticulture, and her goal was to do that, either volunteer or working part-time in that. And she loved that, but you've got to build up the assets. We talk about, I use a Jim Rome definition. Financial independence is being able to live like you want to live from the income from your personally invested assets. So it's asset-based income. You got to buy assets that throw off a check every month. And so if you can do that, you're effectively retired. You don't have to work if you don't want to. And so what we try to do is help. We developed a process and put the pieces together to help our clients aspire to work optional income. You don't have to work if you don't want to. Even if you shut your business down, if you're in business, you're still supposed to be, and not only just one liquidation event, you should be extracting money out of your business, saving 15-20% of your income and buying other assets. So if you shut the business down, you're still supposed to be financially independent. And so, but you have to think about that. You got to have a plan that does it. You have to have somebody that supports you in that thinking. And I don't think typical advice, if their objective is assets under management, they could be great people, but that's just how the industry works. And that's what they're told to do. So, the Wallstreet is a product manufacturer, and most reps are what I call manufacturers reps. They just sell the financial products and the idea. I had a client, this is when I lost my religion. And on Wall Street, I was doing the teachers, this is like 20 years ago, and I was doing the retirement plans. in the school district. They're called 403Bs of Chester, PA. And this woman, this is right after 9/11. The woman, she lost, like, I inherited her, so I didn't put her in this stuff, but she was in all these unsuitable things. She's 68 and she lost like 50 grand in, I want to say, a month and a half, 2 months. And so we have a meeting so that, you know, the wholesalers from this, if I named the company, you would know, came down from Mount Olympus to bless the registered reps. And I told him this story. He says, well, you know, the market's going to come back. And I was incensed. I was like, are you insane? Did I mention that she was 68? The market's not going to come back in her lifetime. And I was done right there. Like, how dare you tell me that nonsense? And, you know, and I had already been reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was like, all right, I'm already feeling some kind of way. And I've lived through 3 crashes and I didn't know why. And, you know, that I started studying Austrian economics and the business cycle theory because I need to know what was happening. You know, Nelson Nash told me one time, he said, listen, if you know, son, if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. Right. And most people, that's why we talked before we start recording, you can't just have in a world where all you see is real estate. Right. Because you need to think. One of the things we talk about is you got to think from a macro perspective because everything affects everything else. So you need to see how to A, protect yourself, and B, how to take advantage of opportunities. And you want to be able to see them coming from a long way away. And so if you start understanding economics and starting thinking from, you know, how these other asset classes, so people say, oh, you know, we're printing all this money and there's no inflation. I said, well, you see, go to Lowe's and try to buy some wood. You're starting to see the inflation in commodity prices, in oil prices. Well, what's that going to do to building prices, which is going to, you know, and see, so all of that stuff, you've got to kind of see that. So this is the kind of stuff I try to get our clients to think about. I just don't want you to be waiting there and hoping the daggone market goes up. So that's a lot. Not all at once. You know, you eat a piece of one slice at a time. But, you know, we do monthly and weekly educational calls for our clients. So I'm always, you know, trying to, you know, help them block out the noise they hear and just give them new information. So, you know, as y'all hear, I can talk. And so I've got a lot to say on this topic because I'm very passionate about it. Because if you don't hear it from me, you're not going to hear it.
Right. No, this is how I'm going to end this. You know, I have to point out that, you know, I'm one of those big proponents, and my listeners have heard this time and time again, that you are the sum of those 5 people you hang out with. And if you don't have somebody like Curtis as one of those 5, you're missing out. I mean, if one of those 5s is simply subscribing to Curtis's podcast, and so you have him in your ear, at least, I don't know how often you release, Curtis, once a week?
Once a week.
Weekly. I mean, that alone will be, consider that one of your 5 if you have to, but you have to have that constant injection of what Curtis is talking about. So again, head over to find the Practical Wealth Show on your favorite podcast app, practicalwealthadvisors.com. And again, if you text P-Wealth at 1-833-422-0250, you'll get a report around the Create Wealth Through Velocity of Money. This has been a great conversation, but I always end with, is there a question you wished I would have asked here today?
I don't think so. No, you're right. Because I'm going blank. I mean, you know, I just people say, "What did you say?" I said, "No, were you writing it down?" Because like you couldn't tell me what I said 20 minutes ago. So no, I thought it was a great. I had a lot of fun. I love, you know, sharing this stuff because I think that, you know, we are, and Curtis has no original thoughts, just so you know. I mean, so I follow the winners. You know, I try to follow successful people, and I try to distill, you know, success leaves clues. So if you start to listen and you hear the language of what the winners are doing, you know, winners win. So you listen to Buffett. A great book is that I like is called The Joy of Compounding.
Mhm.
And I forget the author, but he's studying Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And what happens is they read so much. And when I read it, I was like, oh, I get this. It's if you start to, if you expand your knowledge, then what happens is the dots start to connect,
Mhm.
from the creativity. You'll say, oh, this was over here. And it seems like it has nothing to do with each other, but then you'll look over here and you start to see how they call it a lattice work of connections. And so if you want to get good at something, guys, you got to practice, you got to study, and you got to teach. So we teach our clients, play cash flow, do a book study with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and go through the study questions. What I told that couple and that I was talking to, or, do a book study on, what are the 5 laws of gold from Richest Man in Babylon, and teach it. And what you'll do is you'll find your understanding gets better as you show it to somebody else. And so we've got to, to borrow the COVID world, we're all in this together.
Mhm.
But I don't want you to look for the main thing I teach people is, listen, stop looking for other people to solve your problems, and take control of your life, and stop looking for other people to save yourself.
You bring up the cash flow game, and you probably know the trick to that game. And I'm probably going to ruin it for everybody. But, we were talking about networking and being around like-minded people. Cash flow has a second lesson there that I think sometimes gets missed. And I like to bring it up on occasion because I think it's interesting, because I think it directly correlates to real life. Most people go into games, and it's all about competing or beating the people around you when you're at the game. But cash flow is designed so that if you start playing it as a cooperative game, the game is over in like 30 minutes and everybody wins, because everybody leaves the table wealthy in the end. So if you start to help each other out
that way. Yeah. I know it teaches you to collaborate, because school teaches you to get an A and not to collaborate, but you really should be getting the cards and asking, what about this? Is this cash for cash return? Is this good? And people are trained not to do that.
Yeah. So when you said earlier, your income is a direct measure of how you communicate, that's a great example of that. Like if you communicate and collaborate with those people around that table, around that board, you'd be surprised at the results.
Yeah. And then the game imprints on you, and you'll start seeing the world differently. You'll start seeing financial statements and everything. And because Rich Dad Poor Dad is basically a book about accounting. After Rich Dad Poor Dad, I always tell people, if y'all see the Matrix, make the first Matrix, and at the end where Neo starts to believe and he could see the Matrix and everything is in slow motion. When I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, I get it. I see it. I'm the one, because I like, so for example, I was just talking to Clyde, we were joking because he had the Carlton Sheet stuff, right? For those of y'all, and I had the cassette, I said I had the cassettes and the CDs, but he would do a performer, right? And he would talk about, in the thing of performer, I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand it. And when I reached that point, I was like, oh, that's what he's talking about. It's just financial statement. This is like, and so all of a sudden, all these, I started to see them in everything. So when I work with clients, if you talk to me for like within 5 questions, I could draw you the little boxes from Rich Dad Poor Dad. I could draw them on a yellow pad and show you the story of your life in 5 6 questions. Just numbers tell a story.
This has been a great conversation. And if you haven't figured it out, Curtis is the one. So
I am the one.
Well, thanks, Curtis. I hope we could chat again.
Please, I would love to. I'll tell you both things I know. So